ever notice how, like, sometimes the smartest person falls for some pretty out there ideas?
Yeah.
It's wild.
It's like almost a paradox, right? You're
Yeah.
like, brilliant person, they must have it all figured out.
Right, right.
But intelligence, it doesn't, it's not a guarantee.
Doesn't mean you're immune to bad takes,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
And that's what we're kind of digging into today, like why that is.
Yeah.
This whole relationship between being smart and, well, falling for stuff that maybe isn't, the most solid.
And how we can avoid that. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we don't end up, another cautionary tale.
Right.
And for this deep dive, we're looking at this analysis. That's really interesting. It gets into like why this happens and, more importantly, like how can we avoid it?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is it's not just like philosophical, like there's actual research on this.
Oh, there's science behind this.
Yeah. There's this Yale law professor, Dan Kahan.
Okay.
He did this study.
Okay, hit me with it. What did he find?
So he showed people data.
Okay.
Same data, but framed in two totally different ways.
Okay.
So one, it was about the effectiveness of skin cream.
Okay.
And the other, it was about gun control, but the same exact numbers.
Oh, sneaky. Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right. And so when it was about the skin cream, people who were, better with numbers scored higher on these numeracy tests.
Yeah, yeah.
They were better at interpreting the data
Okay.
objectively.
Uh-huh.
But when it was about gun control, all of a sudden...
Hot button issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The people who were, good with numbers, they were more likely to be biased.
It's like when your team, blatantly does something wrong, and you're like, no,
They
but...
just find a way to justify it.
You're like, no, but see, if you look at it from this angle, it's like, we all have these blind spots.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, the source we're looking at, they call these fashionably irrational beliefs.
Fashionably irrational beliefs?
Okay, FIBs.
Yeah, got it.
So it's like, those shoes that are like, they look cool, but they're completely impractical.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone's like, these are kind of a bad idea, but everyone wears them because it signals something,
Right, like you're in the know or whatever, yeah.
It's like that, but for ideas.
Okay, so we're buying into stuff. But why? Why do we do that even when maybe deep down we kind of get the sense it's, I don't know.
Well, think about it. Like, how did intelligence evolve?
Okay.
It wasn't about finding objective truth, right? Like, that wasn't the goal.
Right, survival.
Survival, exactly. And fitting in.
Oh, so it's not even just about being right. It's about being right in the eyes of your people, your group.
Yes. And this is where they talk about master debaters.
Master debaters, okay.
So, like, think about those fields where, part of the job is just being able to argue really well.
Okay, so like lawyers,
yeah.
Politicians,
Academia, sometimes. Oh, academia, yeah.
Yeah.
Where you could basically argue that the sky is green, and I'd be like, maybe.
and you almost believe them right.
Yeah.
They're so good.
Sure.
But the problem is...
It's not about the truth.
It's not about the truth, yeah.
It's about winning.
And so you get this breeding ground for these FIBs. You have all these smart people rewarded for being persuasive, even if the idea is kind of iffy.
Yeah.
And because they're seen as thought leaders, their ideas, even the irrational ones, they spread.
Yeah.
Which, leads us to an example that the source uses that might be a little bit touchy, this whole idea of wokeism.
Wokeism.
Yeah.
Now there's a word that gets people going.
Yeah, it's definitely a lightning rod.
Yeah.
And, just to be clear, like, we're not here to tell you what to think about it,
Right.
We're just trying to understand this whole, like, fashionably irrational beliefs.
Yeah.
How they can take hold even in, groups of really smart people.
Right. We're all about the why here, not taking sides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for people who maybe aren't as familiar with this whole wokeism thing, how's the source actually defining it here?
Yeah, let's define our terms.
Okay, so they describe it as basically an ideology that's really big on identity, social justice,
Okay.
often frames things in terms of power dynamics, who's got it, who doesn't.
Right.
And it gained a lot of traction in academia.
Which we were just talking about.
Exactly.
The potential breeding ground.
For the master debaters.
Right.
And it's kind of spread out from there.
So they're kind of saying that some of the stuff at the heart of this wokeism thing, while maybe well-intentioned, might not actually, like, hold up if you really scrutinize it.
Yeah, that's the argument they're making.
Okay.
And they point to, like, certain areas of study as examples.
Okay.
Like fat studies, or even some parts of gender studies.
Okay.
And they say, look, these fields, they bring up important issues.
Yeah.
But sometimes this pursuit of social justice it can kind of overshadow, really looking at things objectively.
It's like sometimes there's an argument that sounds good on the surface, you know?
Right.
And it feels right in your gut, but then you start picking at it. You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like, the logic isn't really there.
Right.
I've been there.
Totally.
So if just being smart isn't enough to avoid these traps, then what is?
Well, so the source points to two main things: curiosity and humility.
Curiosity and humility. Okay. Big ones. Tell me more.
Well, think about it.
Okay.
We live in a world where, we're told to be right, win the argument, be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
Curiosity and humility, not always seen as strengths, but they're key to breaking out of that I'm right, you're wrong loop.
It's about being open to being wrong.
Yeah.
Which is hard, man.
It is.
Yeah.
Especially if you're someone who prides themselves on their intellect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does curiosity play into this?
So it's about, approaching new information, even stuff that challenges you at your core, with a sense of wonder. Let me understand this, not let me shoot this down.
So less do I agree with this and more help me get where you're coming from.
Exactly. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Actually listen.
Right.
Really try to see the world through a different lens, even if it's just for a minute.
It's like that saying, you can be right or you can be in relationship.
Ooh, I like that.
Sometimes choosing to be open, even if it means maybe you don't have all the answers, that's more valuable than just being right.
Yeah, beautifully put. And that's where the humility comes in.
Okay.
That willingness to admit, you know what? I don't know everything.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's often how we learn the most.
It's like that Richard Feynman quote. He's like, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool.
Oh, that's so good.
Right. So how do we stop fooling ourselves?
But it's not just about knowing this stuff. You got to actually live it.
Okay, so less theory, more action. Love it. What can our listeners actually do? Give me the inside scoop. What can we actually do?
So one thing they talk about is like changing how we think about conversations.
Okay.
It's not about winning.
Oh, interesting.
It's about learning.
So it's like the whole goal is different.
Yeah. Instead of going into it like, I'm going to win this argument,
Right.
it's, I'm going to try to get you.
I like that.
Yeah. And even, especially when you disagree, that's when it's really important.
It's like you're not trying to plant your flag, you're trying to understand the landscape.
Yes. Ask those clarifying questions like, how did you even come to that? Or what in your experience led you there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really listen. Don't just be waiting for your turn to talk.
Right. Right.
And like, if they make a good point, even if it challenges you, acknowledge it.
Totally. It's like that saying, everyone's got something to teach you.
Right.
You can learn from anyone. We like to hang out with people who agree with us.
It's comfy.
It's comfortable. But if you want to grow, you got to get out of that.
Yeah. And be open to being wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought about it that way.
That's powerful, man, because the other option is just digging your heels in.
And that gets you nowhere.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when you start having those conversations, not only do you learn more, but it's more fun.
It's less pressure.
Way less defensive. It's a shared thing.
Yeah, like a dance instead of a fight.
Exactly. You're not always in sync, but there's a flow.
There's respect. There's learning. Okay, so big picture, what's the takeaway for our listeners?
So being smart is great, but it doesn't mean you're automatically going to make good decisions.
It's a tool.
Yeah. It's how you use it. Curiosity, humility, those are the keys.
They make you a better thinker.
Yeah. You see your own biases and other people's more clearly.
We've all been there, right? Believing something that maybe isn't true.
Oh, for sure.
But the good news is we can all get better. This isn't about shaming anyone.
Yeah, it's about growth.
Exactly. We can all be more critical, more open, more like okay with not knowing everything.
It's a journey, not a finish line.
I love that. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks for this deep dive. And to everyone listening, remember, stay curious, stay humble, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.